Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Reenactors Corner. Here again with Chris, and we're going to talk about events. And that's it, actually.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning back in. This is Chris, and I'm excited about today's episode. We're going to talk about events.
And this is the first time we actually record together after the release of the podcast.
I really enjoyed all the nice feedback that I got from so many people. Thanks to everybody who sent me a nice message. And even if you send me a bad message, that's fine too. I appreciate the feedback. I already told Lasse that my plan for this episode is going to be to say the word a lot less, because I noticed that I said it a lot in the first episodes. And then Lasse told me that he had edited out a bunch, which was like soul crushing also.
I should keep those secrets to myself.
You should have just told me, like, hey, easy with the you know?
You know, could you say a
Oh,
little
killing
less?
me. Killing me. Anyway, Lasse, we were going to talk, I guess, about what we've been up to since the first episodes aired.
Yeah, I've actually had two events, a small public event and a small private one, I guess. I guess the public show is it was like a annual meetup for the for some local historical military vehicle enthusiasts, and we were invited there to show some German kit. And there were also some of the brand new American reenactors in Norway, like the GI reenactors, and that's pretty good to meet them. I know the dudes already pretty much. And since this is like a cozy event, was only two of us who could go. Me and another guy in the unit. We went as Panzergrenadier, late war. And the event has one of these treasure hunts where you basically drive around in a vehicle and you answer different questions. You have some a gun range where you're gonna shoot, and you get like different points for the various stuff. So we teamed up with the GIs. So you had Germans and GIs in a Dodge weapons carrier, and the last post was when everybody's gathered after they've eaten dinner, and it was a pretty bizarre thing because it was also going to be the tiebreaker, and we were already pretty well off points wise, and it was to drive a electrically driven mobility scooter that had a wooden pole attached to it going off to the right side, and attached to the end was a rope that almost touched the ground, and at the end of that was a water bottle, a field canteen. And you were supposed to drive zigzag between some jerry cans with the bottle, which starts swaying a lot. So it was difficult, and I was the one who were going to do it for my team. And I've never driven a mobility scooter before. This is like the epitome of like this is peak reenactors and reenacting. Late war German in a pale blue mobility scooter, driving through jerry cans. But I did actually pretty well until I misunderstood the controls of the vehicle and ran into the crowd and hit a guy.
That's the most insane thing I've ever heard, Lasse.
There is a video of it. Sadly, podcast is audio only. It's
That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. I can't even imagine an event where part of the reenactment is to drive a mobility scooter, even if you don't run over people in the crowd.
it was pretty fun because like the steering wheel of the mobility scooter was more like a bike, and then you have the little handle on your right hand, which on every other vehicle ever has been the brakes, but here was the accelerator. So as I saw that I was gonna hit the crowd, my instinct were to like squeeze the brakes, which is the accelerator. So in the video, you can actually see a wheel spin in the gravel, and me just shooting into the crowd and hitting a guy.
Oh my God.
And the guy was like, he's a pretty old guy, but he jumped onto the mobility scooter, and I ran him
Oh,
through a Militaria store.
that sounds. I can't even imagine. I mean, it's inconceivable to me. That's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard happening at any reenactment anywhere in the world of any kind at any time.
We never expected it to go like that. Anyways, we got third place and we won a jerry can of petrol or
So
gas.
congratulations.
Yeah, it was
You really won a
bizarre.
jerry can full of gas?
Yeah, that was the third prize.
What did you do with it?
The guy who drove the Dodge weapon carrier got it.
I see. Okay, cool.
It wasn't a German jerry can; it was just a jerry can, basically.
Sure. It's still, you know, you're you got to realize that you're telling me that you put on a World War II German uniform and rode a mobility scooter in front of a crowd and drove into the crowd, but in doing so, eventually won a prize, which was a jerry can filled with gasoline.
Yes.
Like, that's something that I would bet never happened in the entire history of the Earth and may never happen again.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was funny because every time the water ball would hit one of the jerry cans that was on the course, you would get the -5 points. And as I ran into the crowd, the guy tallying the points said, "Well, I guess that's a -5."
I would have thought you would have gotten extra points.
The video is fittingly called German Panzergrenadier Assaulting Allied Fuel Depot 1944 Colorized.
Let me ask you this. Did you try to get into like a zony first person headspace and imagine how a German soldier would have felt if he was driving a mobility scooter in front of a crowd and accidentally plowed into the crowd and then won a jerry can full of gasoline at the end?
No.
Well,
But
excellent.
and then the week later we had another event which was we're supposed to be 10 guys, but some people dropped off, so we ended up being 5.5 guy. One guy had to leave later on the day to go to work the next day. And we're supposed to have like a field exercise, train on Schützenreihe, Schützenkette, Hinlegen, etc., camouflage. But since we're so few, it just ended up being reenacting of a Spähtrupp. So we found a location and we dug in and we slept there. And this time of year in Norway, you have a very strong sun daytime, but nighttime it's almost below freezing. So you can't wear clothes daytime, but you have to wear everything you got nighttime. So that makes it kind of difficult.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic event in my book, and I'm glad that you got to do that. I'm jealous. It sounds really fun.
Well, yeah. What about you? Have you done anything exciting?
I haven't. I haven't done an event in months. It feels strange. Our next event is coming up pretty soon, and I'm excited for that. I think it's the weekend after this coming weekend. We're doing like a public display thing here in Massachusetts where I live. So I've been keeping busy at home. I've been in my spare time getting some paperwork projects done, some reenactment paperwork projects that people paid me to do a wicked long time ago. And I had just become overwhelmed and I hadn't finished these projects at all in a timely way, for which I'm very sorry to the people that I'm doing these projects for. But the good news is I'm getting the stuff out the door. I shipped 3 Zoldbucher out this week.
Nice.
Yeah, hopefully very soon I will be completely done with all of this work that I had agreed to do for people in the past. And I think what I'll do then is I'm going to focus on doing some paperwork projects for my own unit because I haven't been able to do anything for myself or for guys in my group because I've been busy doing stuff for other people. And also, I've gotten some new office stuff. I got a couple of typewriters repaired. One of them, I had new rubber put on it so that it feels like typing on a new typewriter instead of typing on an antique that's decades old. And I'm really happy about that. That's the first time I've ever done that, and I'm really glad that I did that.
Was that expensive?
It was actually, well, it cost $80 to get the new rubber put on, so
That's not too bad.
that's not too bad. But the typewriter, I also paid a professional typewriter repairman to go through both of these typewriters and do a full servicing. So clean, lubricate, make adjustments, make everything perfect. And these typewriters are not like little portable typewriters, they're the big standard office type machines. And so that's a lot of work. And that was like $145 each machine. So it wound up being kind of like an expensive bill, but certainly well worth it because I do use the typewriters a lot, not just for reenacting stuff, but like every day too. But I do use them for reenacting, and it feels really nice to type on a machine that's working exactly the way that it should. And hopefully, I won't have to do anything to these machines ever again, and they should work perfectly until after I die.
Well, then it's worth the investment.
Definitely worth the investment. Also, in both of these cases with these typewriters that I'm talking about, I bought the typewriters in a terrible, like decrepit, non-working condition, and I put some work in to get them working again and fix them up. So the amount of money that was spent was like probably less, still less than it would have been to buy a new, restored, ready to go typewriter. By putting some of the work in myself, I saved some money.
Yeah, usually do that. But
Yeah.
there was one thing I saw on your Facebook I would like to just get a little bit more information on.
Okay. I gotta guess that
Because
this might be.
perhaps, but it's involving a major fast food chain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew it. I know it. Well, I was at home and I got a message from a friend on Instagram that was telling me that right at that moment, McDonald's was having a promotion where you could exchange any amount of foreign currency for one of four special limited time international dishes that McDonald's is currently doing as part of a promotion. So you could choose between a burger from Spain, a chicken sandwich from Canada, French fries. I think they're from Australia or something. And then there was a Dutch milkshake, sort of a thing, a McFlurry, so to speak. So as soon as I saw that you could get a McDonald's item in exchange for any amount of foreign currency, I was all about it because I go to Canada sometimes and I have all kinds of Canadian money. And I thought, wow, I could go down there, I could get a burger for like a nickel. But then I thought about it and I thought, this might be the only chance that I will ever have to actually walk into a real restaurant and exchange a German Reichsmark for an item. So, so over the years, I've picked up a lot of World War II German coins, and the small denominations, the Reichspfennig, they're very inexpensive. They're almost worthless. And one Reichspfennig is the equivalent of like 8.5 cents in today's money, right? And the coin itself is worth some really negligible amount in poor condition. So I rummaged through some of my things and I found a one Reichspfennig coin that was in poor condition and worthless. And of course, it's got the eagle, got the Nazi eagle on it. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking, what's the worst that could happen, right? There's really nothing bad that can happen. I'm sure they were getting all kinds of weird foreign currency. So I took my Reichspfennig from 1942, and I got to have that experience of walking into a restaurant and purchasing some food. I decided to get the McFlurry, for which I paid with a Reichspfennig. So I'm probably the only person in 2019 who can say that I made a financial transaction using currency from the German Reich. I mean, it was cool, right? It's like Zony. It's like that was my reenactment event for this month. It took place at a McDonald's, and I portrayed a man spending a rice penny. And I got a delicious McFlurry, which I would recommend it to our listeners. It was delicious.
Oh,
Thanks to McDonald's for making this dream come true for me.
it's so bizarre.
It was really
It's
something
so
else. Now,
bizarre.
I will also say there is an aspect to this that I should admit, which is that when I went into this particular McDonald's, the fire alarm was going off. So the police and the fire department was there, and the entire building was filled with this ear splitting, wailing siren. It was this incredibly loud sound. And so I probably could have given this person behind the counter almost any object, like a rock, right? And he would have just given me the thing because this guy was losing his mind. So he didn't even really look at it, you know. Now, and I do hope that, however, whatever, I imagine that all of this currency was collected by the various McDonald's and is being sent somewhere where it will be, you know, given to charity, or I don't know what's going to happen. And I do hope that somewhere along the line, someone recognizes the unique kind of collectible value of this thing and it doesn't just go into the trash, you know. But it was worth it. I have no regrets.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty bizarre. Like the mobility scooter incident.
Sure. Part of the fun of reenacting is that you're going to do things, you know, whether it's at an event or outside an event that no other human being is ever going to do, right? Like, I don't know. It's just a weird, welcome to being weird. Weird podcast. Podcast talk about weird McDonald's experiences. That could be a future episode.
I just did a quick Google. A
Yeah.
McDonald's representative told Business Insider that each McDonald's franchise will have full discretion over what to do with the foreign currency when the event is wrapped.
Wow. Well, I hope that somebody who works at that McDonald's gets to take it home as a souvenir. I definitely won't be going to the McDonald's to ask about it. I'll tell you that.
It's just amazing that you actually got to use Third Reich money in today's society.
Something, all right. Yeah.
I am full of
I could
envy.
not wanting to get into too much of a tangent before we get to the main topic here, but I could do a whole episode of the podcast about weird reenactment related things that happen to me inside fast food restaurants, like during events or before or after events. In fact, I had some, just a very brief here,
Okay.
couple of sentences. I was doing a parade, and I was doing a parade in a German uniform, which is a long story for another time. But we got paid to do this parade. The town wanted us to do it. I went into the McDonald's to get something to drink. I was wearing the Wehrmacht uniform. The person working there thanked me for my service, which is a thing that happens a lot when you're wearing a military uniform. They think that you're in the modern army. And I said, "Oh, no. I'm not in the army. This is a World War II uniform." And he said, "Oh, cool. Were you in World War II?" So that was the only time that I got that reaction.
Yeah, I remember having sushi chefs taking photos with us at the
That sounds
square,
great.
but
Sounds great.
that's also a story for another time.
Cool.
So let's delve into today's topic.
Cool. Let's dive in. So I wanted to talk all about events, something that we haven't really discussed so far in the other episodes of the podcast. And I guess I'll start by saying, all right, here's like a real life example. So the next event that my unit is doing is an event that we've never done before. I've never attended this event, and no one in my unit has ever attended the event. And in fact, I haven't talked to anybody who's ever attended this event before. From my understanding, this is an event that used to happen years ago and then didn't happen for a little while. And then this year they're bringing it back. So this particular event, the way that I found out about it was another reenactor who was approached. This is going to be a public event, and it's put on by a museum. And this museum deals with historical firearms It's at the Springfield Armory in Springfield, Massachusetts, and inside the museum they have historical firearms. It used to be a factory where they made firearms that were used by the American military, and they have exhibits on American military guns as well as weapons used by America's historic enemies in wars of the past. So somebody else contacted me and they said, the Springfield Armory is doing this event and they're looking for a quality German unit who can put on a display that deals with weapons. And since you guys do a second line rear area impression that uses a wide variety of different weapons, maybe it would be an ideal thing for you guys to do. Would it be okay if I give the event organizer your contact information? And I said, certainly. So the event organizer reached out to me and she told me what the event was going to be about and what they wanted to do. And so now the ball is in my court to evaluate this event and determine if it's something that would be a good fit for my group. So the criteria for how I would evaluate that are different, whether it's a public event or a private event. And if it's a public event, I'm looking at it this way. I'm thinking, is there a real sense that the organizers of this event really want me to be there? And is there also a sense that this is something where we're going to be kind of partnering up with an event organizer rather than just showing up and trying to do our own thing that might not be a good fit? Also, I asked myself, look, we've talked before about the sensitivity that exists in our modern society about World War II German soldiers. And does the event organizer realize that there are going to be swastikas on the belt buckles that we're going to be wearing in this display? So I responded and I said, I'm interested in this event. For us, we will really only do public events if it's with a legitimate historical site or museum. And of course, this is put on by a museum. And I said, we would love to be a part of your museum's activities. We do a World War II German military unit representation, and there are going to be swastikas that are going to be visible in our portrayals because it's important to us to do this in a way that's historically accurate and authentic. And obviously, there's always a chance that somebody may see that and have a negative reaction. Do you understand that? And are you prepared to basically stick up for us and explain what we're there to do if something were to go wrong? And she responded and said, yes, absolutely. We're aware of the historical realities of what you guys do and how that's going to look and what that means. And we want that. And we really would be very pleased if you would come to our event and be a part of this event. And so that made me feel really good. And we committed to going. And I think we're going to have 5 guys, which is a good turnout for us, and especially for a public event, because that tends to draw fewer guys for us than private events.
Well, that's pretty good then.
Yeah, I think it's good. What about you? I mean, when you guys get asked about doing an event, what are the things that you think about when you try to determine if it's worth your time or not?
The problem is that we actually have very few events. Most events we do, we actually create ourselves. But there's a few public places. We've stopped going to one public event, which is actually this weekend. We had it annually forever, but it started making restrictions. And we didn't like that. And it wasn't really worth our time because there's really nothing going on. So we dropped it now.
Sure.
But sometimes we get asked to, for example, do events with our other reenactment friends in Sweden, in Denmark, etc. And one of the criteria then is, do enough people from our unit want to go? Do we have other events close to that event? Because it's kind of rough to do one event one weekend and the next weekend going on a 10-hour road trip.
Totally.
And then again, what kind of event it is, what it is, how we had a lot of that already this year. If not, it's more likely we're willing to go. So yeah, it's more of that stuff, I guess.
I think you hit on some really good points there. I like that you said, um, you used the term worth our time, because our time and effort with this stuff really is valuable, and there's only a limited amount of it. And that's certainly something that goes through my mind when I'm looking at how much effort am I going to have to put into this event, and how much fun am I going to have there, and what am I going to get out of it, and is it worth it? And that's kind of an equation, and sometimes it's worth it, and other times you decide that it's not.
Exactly. We had we're still discussing, so I'm not going to go out with any names or anything. But there's a play that is set in World War II in front of a live audience, and they asked us to be extras in our German uniforms. And we said we would be interested in that if it fits our schedule, because we got people working. We're not full time professional reenactors. Many seem to believe that.
Sure.
And and then we asked like, how much can you pay each of us? And they're like, pay? We don't really have money. And then it's like, do we, like, being an extra is a professional work? People do actually live off being extras or make a pretty nice side income. And then is the question, do we want to work for free because we already spent a lot of money on the gear?
Totally. Right. You should be getting paid more than what a regular extra gets.
Yeah, you should get a day rate plus rent of the kit.
Definitely.
But they seem to want us to work for free because we've already spent a lot of money and got the gear.
Right. Reenactors are a resource, I think, that get taken advantage of. And it's a future time. I should write this down. We could do a whole episode about like TV and film work and how the interplay between that and reenacting. Because I've been in a lot of different types of movie projects, ranging from blockbuster Hollywood movies by famous directors, in one case, to independent student films. And I've had fun. I've had good times and bad times doing big budget productions that I got paid for, and I've had good times and bad times doing independent projects, even sometimes where, okay, if you can't pay me, can we at least make this worthwhile or fun? Is there something about this that makes me want to do this?
Yeah,
So,
like if
um,
it's like if students ask nicely and it's a Saturday, for example, then it's like, yeah, can look at it doing it for free. But this player wanted us to take like a week off our jobs.
that's absurd. Yeah, that's absurd. I got contacted a few years ago by an independent filmmaker who had no budget to pay anybody, but he pitched his idea for what he wanted to make this film about. And he was like, I'll come to you, I'll find locations near you, we'll do this on a weekend, and I'll get lunch for everybody, and I'll make sure that you guys all get copies of the film, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can use stills from the film or put it up on the internet or whatever. And his idea for the movie, it was a short film. It sounded cool, and what he wanted us to do was reasonable and sounded like it would be fun for us to do. So I said sure, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, then it is
Whereas
worth it.
Sure. Whereas there are other people who offered to pay me $100 a day, and I told them no because I didn't think it was going to be worth it, because of what they wanted me to do sounded terrible or didn't sound fun.
Yeah, totally. Um, there's also the another thing to take into consideration when evaluating an event is the duration of the event, and I feel that is very closely linked to the distance to the event as well.
Totally.
Like, for example, we won't do a 10-hour drive to Denmark to do a 1 day event.
This is something that we have been faced with many times, where an event sounds great, but you can't get there until Friday afternoon and you have to leave on Sunday morning. And the event maybe is many hours away, and it isn't worth the drive. In my experience, even a 6 hour drive, basically, the way that really functionally works is that becomes like a travel day, right? Like a 6 hour drive on a Sunday, that's basically your whole Sunday. Especially considering that you're going to stop for meals. Maybe you have to drop off somebody that you're carpooling with, or you have to unpack your gear or whatever. That's like your whole day. So for me to do 2 travel days for one day of reenacting, it doesn't make any sense. So I'll actually ask event organizers, hey, is there any, like, if I'm considering an event that's very far away and that isn't a very long event, I'll say, what's the earliest that we could arrive? Is there any way that we could arrive, say, on Thursday night? And then we have the property to ourselves on Friday, and we can do immersive stuff. And very often, people will work with us and say, sure, we can tell the landowner that you're going to be there. We'll make sure that the gate is open or whatever. And I don't regret that. I enjoy those types of days very much. Sometimes when we do stuff like that, I enjoy the time before everybody else arrives more than the whole rest of the event.
Yeah, we also do that if it's an event far away.
When it comes to private events, if I'm looking at a private event, I'm looking at who is running it, what's the unit or person that is putting this event on, what's their reputation, have there been events at this site before, what does the site have to offer, and where it is in relation to IM, and also where it is in relation to what other units what other units are in that area, because it gives me a sense of who is going to be in an event. And there are some units where if I know that they're doing the event, that gives me a little bit more incentive to go because I have friends in those units, or just because I respect them, I'm inspired by them, I like to see them in the field, and seeing them at an event adds value to it for me. And also, just like, there are certain like things about events that to me are maybe a negative. One of those things is like, if I think that the person is I mean, this is a very subjective thing, but I think if someone's trying too hard to come up with gimmicks to make an event unique, but not putting enough effort into really thinking about, is this fun? Then to me, it's not really something that I'm interested in. I mean, anybody can make an event that's unique, right? Like we could do an event where there's a pizza delivery station, and also there's a baseball game that takes place during the event, and it's catered by professional chefs, and at the end everybody gets a petrol can full of gasoline. But like, that would be a very unique event, but it wouldn't make any sense for me. It wouldn't be fun. So that's something that I think about too. What is the organizer trying to do here? Are they trying to have a quality experience, or are they trying to just come up with something so that they can say that they're thinking outside the box, even though maybe their idea isn't very good?
Yeah, just trying to draw in as many groups as possible, for example. That isn't always a good thing.
Well, that kind of, the idea of trying to bring in as many groups as possible brings us, I think, to the idea of like how these events get promoted. And in my opinion, there's really nothing that beats a unit commander, an event organizer, or a host who is in tune with the local reenactment scene, who takes the time to reach out to the unit leaders in a given area and say, hey, I've got an idea for an event. This is what I'm going to do. This is going to be the date. Can you guys come? Can you commit? What's it going to take to get you to commit to the event? Do you have any feedback or ideas for me to make this event better? And that kind of like person-to-person sort of networking, I think that really is what makes the best events. And I think that's what's most important in promoting an event. I really think that almost any event can be successful if the people in charge of it are good communicators and are putting in the work to talk to the right people and figure out how can we work together to make this something really special.
Communication seems to be it seems to be the most important thing of creating an event, getting people to come in.
And social media is definitely a part of that communication, but I really think it's only a part. you can't just make a date for an event and create a Facebook group for the event and invite people to join the group and expect that the event is going to take off. It takes work to promote an event successfully. It takes effort. Creating buzz, having people who are posting things on social media about it, reaching out to people who are going and talking to them about ideas, different things that they could do. All of these things in the lead up to an event, I think, are so important to making an event a success. And I have seen events that I really thought could have succeeded where the site was great, the people were earnest, everything was there, but the promotion aspect wasn't there. And especially now with the interplay between social media and reenacting, the promotion aspect has just become so important.
Without good promotion, you're not getting any crowd, really.
There is really no way to attract a lot of people without doing real, vigorous, actual promotion on social media and in real life. And I'll give some credit here where credit is due. Earlier this year, I went to that Stalingrad event in Ohio, and the people who run that event do a tremendous, terrific job of promoting it. They're proactive. They're posting content. They're posting historical stuff that relates to the event. They're getting information out there. They're getting the guidelines and stuff out there with plenty of time so that people can talk about it and put together their kits. And it kind of creates its own like little mini sub community in reenacting where people are like, oh, I'm putting together my kit for this event. Here's what I've got so far. Here's what I still need. And it creates this kind of background chatter that creates a buzz that gets people excited. People see other people talking about the event and they want to go. And then, of course, after the event, all of these people who were super excited about going are posting their pictures of the event and talking about the time that they had. And so that sets the stage for the next year and so on. And like I say, I think that the people who are the crew of that Stalingrad event, I think really think they do a tremendous job.
Yeah, I would say they do a very tremendous job of getting information out in a timely manner as well, because one of the guys in my unit actually went there.
Yeah, I met him. That was cool.
He was actually one of the he also reenacts GI, and he was one of the reenactors on the treasure hunt, watching me mow down a crowd.
Excellent. Well, what a story he must have to tell.
Well, you got a few good stories from a Stalingrad event, that's for sure.
So they're doing another event at that same site in October, and this one is a Westfront event that is a Nuremberg scenario, and it's months away, but they've already published all the uniform and impression guidelines and provided people with historical background information, and I'm sure that the event will be another success for them. You know, the that's how it's done. And I'm not going to name names here, but there are some other events that I enjoy that I would love to support more, but that just the level of organization maybe isn't there, or maybe the level of motivation isn't there, or maybe they just don't have the people or don't have the right people. I don't know, and the people just don't turn out, and I think that's too bad. But I talked the other day to somebody who was a longtime reenactor, someone who I respects his ideas about events a lot, and he said something to the effect of, if an event fails, it's a failure of the event coordinator, the event host. And I mean, there are definitely reasons why events can fail that are extraneous. I mean, if you're trying to be the coordinator of an event at a site and the landowner pulls the rug out from under you, I mean, what can you do? But generally speaking, I think it's true. I think if you're the event coordinator, the onus is on you to make sure that you promote this in such a way that people will turn out for it.
Yeah, there's an upcoming event in the UK in a very short amount of time, and that's been like it's a invite only event because they want the best of the best that they know are good, and that's been like they basically get all the information out a year ago, and that's a very
That's
long
great.
time.
That's great. Well, from what I understand, there are American Civil War events where the information is presented 2 years in advance. And sometimes I think about World War One reenacting here in the U.S. There's the Great War Association site in Newville, Pennsylvania, and they do a spring event and a fall event. And you can bank on those events. The dates are published way in advance. They always happen, and sometimes I feel a little jealous of that. I mean, I really like to go to a lot of events. I try to do an event every month, but I think, man, if I only did two events a year, the amount of effort and preparation that I could put into each event, I could be so prepared with 6 months of planning. I think I could like achieve more, you know?
Yeah, and that's one thing we struggle with in my unit is that we try to avoid having multiple events in a short amount of time because we see a trend that people will choose either or, and people will choose. Some people will choose one event and some people will choose the other event because they're so close in time, and then you get like a mediocre turnout for both events instead of just having one event where everybody goes to.
Yeah, when you have too many events, it definitely detracts in terms of numbers. Um, like I say, I try to do a lot of events. I think it was a couple of years ago. Our event calendar here is really screwed up. There's months that go by with no events, and then suddenly you've got a bunch of events that are stacked up on top of each other. I think it was a couple of years ago I did 6 events in 8 weeks. I did an event every other weekend from the end of August until the end of October. And this was absurd and certainly unsustainable. Um, I probably hadn't done an event for 2 months prior to that, though. So that's something that I have to work on in my own group is planning our own events so that we can have a more reasonable, spaced out schedule of events for the year.
Well, it certainly helps in getting a consistent number because if you're having so many events that people get tired of reenacting, it's no use. But if you like have just enough events that they get hungry between every event, then it's a
Yeah,
smashing.
it's a balance for sure. To me, one of the biggest like killers is when you have events that get canceled because it's this like huge morale drain. People need to be able to be confident when an event is announced that it's going to happen because they need to take time off from work. They need to make sure that they have travel plans arranged. They need to make sure that they have their food ready for their field ration or whatever it is. And then the event doesn't happen, and it's like, great, I took work off for nothing. Now I've got this weird food that I'm just going to throw away. And then when the next event comes around, before they go into their office to ask their boss for the time off, they're thinking, well, what am I going to do? Take the time off and it's just going to get canceled again? So maybe they skip that one. And that can be a real killer in terms of numbers. That's something I really try to avoid is planning events and then having them not happen. That's a bad thing.
Certainly, there's a lot of individual preparation that goes down to every single event, basically.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned as a criteria that like how many guys from your unit want to go. And that's something where having a close-knit group where everybody's on the same page is so good because when people present an idea of an event to me, I already picture exactly in my mind, okay, this guy, and this guy would love to do this. Another couple of guys maybe on the fence. Another few guys definitely wouldn't come to this. And whether that's based on where the event is or what kind of event it is, stuff like that. So yeah, you've got to kind of know going in what kind of numbers would you be able to field. What's reasonable, and that kind of plays a little bit into what I think is important about events is having reasonable expectations. Uh, like if somebody pitches an event to you where you're thinking, all right, this event takes place in the North Pole in January, and it's a month long, and you just lay outside in a glacier. Like that event, whatever you think you're going to do at that event, you're not going to do. Like that event is going to be a loss. You need to kind of be reasonable in terms of what people really can do, what you really can do, what is going to be fun and make people happy, and then what's going to be boring or too difficult or unattainable and it just isn't going to work.
I totally agree. There's you just need to have realistic expectations. Don't have too high expectations. Rather go in with lower expectations and be amazed than disappointed.
Definitely. There's some basic expectations that I have from a an event that is maybe a weekend long or a long weekend. If someone's doing an event that's one day where you show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're off site at 5 o'clock in the evening, I basically don't have any expectations at all. I'm just going to go there and we're going to do what we do for one day. I mean, that's not even really enough time to check out the site if the property is like of any size at all. But if it's going to be a longer event, then there are some expectations that I have in my mind about what an event host should be able to provide. Like, I think, for one thing, if you're going to be there for 2 or 3 days, the event really should offer you at least one warm meal. Um, Another thing, like a place to go to the bathroom. I don't want to do an event at your property that lasts for 3 days and it's like shit in the woods. I mean, I'll certainly do that sometimes, but other times I mean, I'll take a porta potty, like some kind of bathroom, some kind of sanitation facilities becomes important if an event lasts more than a day or two. Also, I like it when they supply other amenities like firewood. I don't think that's unreasonable to expect that when I go to an event, I pay a registration fee, and the registration fee might be kind of expensive. It might be $50 for a weekend or something, but that's fine if I'm getting out of it things like a meal and some firewood and a place to go to the bathroom, and of course the site rental insurance. I know there are many costs associated with running an event. I'm happy to pay my share, but I want to get something in return. I've definitely done events where I paid maybe $30 for a weekend long event that offered nothing at all, and I kind of walk away thinking, well, maybe that why couldn't that have been $15? What did I just pay for? You know,
Yeah, we don't really do registration fees because we don't really have that many events. So we only do that on larger events abroad in Sweden, Denmark, etc.
sure.
So when you're talking about sanitation facilities, we don't really have any. We have to do with what we have.
You guys ever like dig a real latrine, or is it like one man and a tool versus the forest?
We usually set up a latrine.
Nice. I would be totally open to do that if we had time, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to be in the cards at a lot of sites that we do. There's no space for it, or whatever it is. I think the porta potty thing, a lot of event organizers, landowners feel like it's easier to do it that way. Some places we can't dig.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. It depends on the location, but on the main event we do now, we have a pretty large forest area where we can do more or less whatever we want to.
That
So
sounds great.
it is pretty good. So we built a latrine. My unit co-commander went and did that. I couldn't find it, so I just had to go somewhere else. It was a disaster. That was actually
I've
the
had some
last
I've
event.
had some disasters with regard to using not a bathroom. Times that I had to expel bodily waste. I won't get into detail, but I think eventually, if you're a reenactor, sooner or later you're going to have a collection of stories like this. You're eating weird food. Your diet is different. Your body is reacting to it differently. You might be doing exercise that's strenuous. That might change your digestive system. So definitely a bad time, a weird time with bathroom stuff is definitely a reenactment thing for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, if I go to public events, I do kind of have the expectation that there will be something, for example, a porta potty, as you talked about. On the
Yeah,
term of registration fees as well. When we do one of those big events, as we had in Normandy in 2017, the registration fee for that is pretty steep. I can't remember specifically, but I think the Normandy event was 175 euros.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money, but like you get all food taken care of, all food, and
Cool.
few extra bits here and there, some rations, vehicles, fuel for the vehicle, so you don't have to pay fuel as you go. It's all accounted
Right.
for. So, like, as you end that event, you kind of feel like your money is being used for the event and not just taken away.
I love that feeling, and I wouldn't hesitate to pay a significant amount of money to do an event if they were going to take care of all my food and maybe do other things that also might be cool. Like we're going to issue ammunition, some stuff like that that's more realistic, right? Like instead of having to bring everything, if you get it issued to you while you go, that's how it was for the soldiers in the World War II. They got what they needed every day. And if I could do an event like that, I certainly would pay for it. What I don't like doing is paying a registration fee where you know that some guy is just making hundreds of dollars off this, right? And it's like, not to say that I don't think that people who put effort in should get something for their efforts, but it's like, it's like, come on, like, um, don't treat me like let's be all in this together. Don't treat me like someone working together with you on a project. Don't treat me like a cash cow, you know?
Yeah, I agree on that. If like you pay a lot and you know it's just going directly into the organizer's money, it's no fun. Like I'm totally in
Yeah.
for them taking a bit of the cake, but not everything.
Yeah, like a unit, I used to be in a unit that ran a pretty big event. And this was an event that had, I think, a reasonable um, registration fee. And in exchange for that, you got, there was insurance for the site, and you got like various types of weird, like event specific props. And there was a field kitchen meal that you got, and there was a bathroom and stuff. So, people definitely got something for their money. And then afterward, if we had maybe a few $100s left over that went to our reenactment group so that we could do other things and go to other events in a year, that was ideal. And I think that it's certainly possible to do events where at the end of the day you have some money left over to put kind of back into the hobby, into other events, and still leave people knowing that they got something, that they didn't pay for nothing. They got something for what they paid.
Well, that seems like the perfect combination, really.
Yeah. With regard to expectations of events, I also feel like there are things that individual reenactors and reenactment units can do to make sure that an event meets expectations. One of those things is what we talked about before, which is communication, where you can talk to an event organizer or talk to your unit commander, and he can talk to an event organizer to voice any concerns. And like I said, like, hey, could we get there earlier? And that adds value to the event. Or I like let's say there's some aspect of the event that people don't want to do for some reason. Just maybe say to the event organizer, hey, I know you guys are planning on doing this. We don't really want to do this. We're going to plan on doing something instead that we want to do during that same time. Is that cool? And in my experience, event organizers like that kind of communication and feedback, and they'll work with you. And so you can kind of, um, behind the scenes and before the event, you can maybe make little tweaks or make it known how you're going to be approaching the event. And I find that that's a lot better way to go about it than to just show up at the event, blow off whatever the event organizer has planned, do your own thing, and then expect that everyone's got to be fine with that. That's like a way to burn bridges when you do that kind of thing, and that's something that my unit has run into trouble with in the past as well.
Yeah, you should be kind of careful with that.
Yeah, so we at a future show, I'll go into some detail about this, where it's like how kind of like I had used to have a concept where we would make our own fun. The fun that was presented for us by the event didn't match what we thought was fun, then we would kind of take it upon ourselves to do something that we thought was fun. And that worked really great in some situations. And it created opportunities and it created things that the event organizers were excited about and later incorporated into the event. And then there were other times that it like blew up in our faces and was a disaster.
Yeah, we've had a few similar instances like that.
We try to take different approaches for different kinds of events now. And I think that that's a real winning strategy, where it's like, okay, there are certain ways that we do things. There's like a default mode that my group has. We set up a tent this way. We set up the tent in such and such a place, and we prepare our meals and issue food, and we do our patrols. We do observation duty. These kind of stock things that we do, but it's not every event is going to be a good fit for the standard way that we do things, and sometimes we look at an event and it's like, you know what, we're not going to be able to create this kind of hyper realistic small camp setting. So is there some other way that we can approach our like tent or lodging ideas at this event that will still feel real but also be a better fit for this type of event? Or is this a case where maybe we just shouldn't go to this type of event at all?
Yeah. In my unit, in the early days, we tried to have like a standard kit that we brought out to every kind of event, but that
Mm.
it didn't really work out well. So now we look at what the event is, what we're gonna do, and we decide if we're even gonna bring tents, for example.
Sure.
For example, on the last event where we had the Speetrup kind of event, we didn't set up any tents. We dug a trench and we slept in the trench. We had cell bombs, but we used it to either cover the trench or lay on it.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would love to have the opportunity to do more immersive events like that.
yeah, but then
Um,
again, for a public event, we will probably put up the tent because it's more comfortable. And on a public event, there's kind of a limit to how immersive it can get.
well, I've made a lot of changes in how we do public events. For one thing, as I mentioned in a previous episode, we try to minimize like swastikas at public events. So no decal helmets, wear the two pocket HBT jacket that has no insignia, that kind of thing. And that creates a look that's totally realistic and correct, but it also minimizes symbols that might be offensive to people. Another example of how I might approach a public event differently is, um, look, if the public event takes place in a grassy field and you're gonna be talking to spectators all day, you basically need to bring some shade for yourself. So I might set up like some Zeltbahnen on poles like up above us to kind of create a sort of a fly or awning. And that's not anything that I've ever seen in a World War II photo. And it probably is not really something that World War II soldiers most likely would have done in most situations, and maybe not at all, right?
I think I've
But
actually seen a photo of that.
cool. I mean, like to some extent, it's I think if you're using materials and stuff that was available to those guys, what would they have done in this situation? I mean, it can be a slippery slope, and I try to use documentation all the time, and I certainly wouldn't do something if I knew for a fact that it was totally wrong.
Yeah,
But like for a public display where you have your mission is to talk to the public and to be there to kind of be an interpreter and be part of the curriculum for the museum, and there's you need to do what you need to do your job. So I'm not willing to get a terrible sunburn where I can't sleep that night because I'm in agony just so that I can say, well, I think that World War II German soldiers would have gotten a sunburn in that situation too.
but they didn't have to talk to public.
I have a photograph of a what appears to be a World War II battle going on, and there are bleachers and there are spectators and crowds. There is people watching this thing, and it is some kind of World War II public battle that took place maybe like in the 1930s or even during World War II. And I wish I knew more about that. Like, I would love to read some letter where Wehrmacht soldier talks about this public relations mission where they had to pretend to be in a battle for the benefit of spectators. I mean, I wonder what that was like for them.
Yeah, original public battle.
Right, like World War II public battle and World War II.
I remember sending some photos to a group chat you and I are in with pictures from the invasion of Norway, where Germans have basically taken up combat ready positions, but there's just the Norwegian public approaching them, standing around, and talking about their weapons and stuff. There's one photo
That's interesting.
with an MG34 on the Lafette behind some barricades, and you have like kids standing around because there's a gun, it's cool. And there's also another photo of several Panzer Ones standing next to a road, and there's just like a bunch of public just standing around looking at it.
Crazy. It's kind of weird to wonder if you could like find some way to make a public display immersive that you pretended like it was during World War II and you had to interact with public spectators for some reason. I mean, that's like so meta, right? Like it would be a bizarre mental exercise, really.
Yeah, especially if you're an occupying force and the public speaks another language, and you see that they're just kids that thinks your gun is cool, but you have to tell them like, could you just step aside because if something happens, we need to shoot.
Yes. Oh man.
And then the kid just looks weird at you because he doesn't really understand what you say. So you
Sure.
need to make like weird sounds like Ich Feuer.
Yeah, boom.
Boom.
Yeah, you die. Not good. I mean, like I've said before, I think a lot of people are aware of my stance on public events. I'm not like a huge fan, but I do think on some level that we as as reenactors have an obligation to share what we do with people who are interested, and public events certainly are a part of that. So I'm excited to do this public event at the museum later this month. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm interested in checking out the other units that go and seeing what they present for a display. And if, afterward, I'll evaluate it and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves and think about what we could do better for next time. And we'll take it from there.
Yeah, and one thing we have experienced is that even if it's like first time you go to an event and it's not really what you expected, you could like send a message to the organizers and say like, hey, maybe like this is our take on it. Maybe you could listen to some of it, and they usually do, and it gets better.
Sure.
So again, communication is vital.
Absolutely. There's something to be said for me too for events that I haven't been to before. I've been reenacting for almost 20 years, and there are some events that I've done dozens of times, and I really like having certain events that I can count on and bank on and that I know what to expect. But sometimes I also like having events where I don't really know what to expect at a property that I've never been to before. There's a certain excitement or a rush that happens when you get to a site you've never been to before and it blows you away. You're like, oh, this is really cool. We do events in Fort Mifflin, which is a Revolutionary War era fortress in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I had never been to an event there. This was maybe like 4 years ago now, but I still remember how excited I was when I got there and started walking around. And it was like, wow, this place is awesome. You've got these old buildings. Everything here looks really cool. Everything's old but well maintained, so it looks correct, and it feels like you've stepped back in time, sort of. And and I've certainly had that feeling at other events, so that weren't like a Revolutionary War fort. Even if it's just that the event hosts have created some trenches for us to use, or if the site has its own natural beauty, right? Like if there's beautiful views, I can take great photos, or the sky is cool at night, even. because there's no light pollution at some of these places. So any of those things can make an event really memorable when you experience it for the first time.
Especially the part about the view, because if you have a nice view, it can basically change the entire mood.
You like wake up in the morning in your Saltbahn tent and open up the flap, and if you can look at this beautiful vista, I mean that's what's better than that?
It reminds me of the event we had, the Spersloop event, because it's summertime in Norway now. We are not far away from having the midnight sun, so it doesn't get dark for long. Just like 2 hours of darkness, and then sunrise starts appearing.
Wow.
So we were sleeping 3 guys down in this trench. 2 guys were laying in the same direction, and I was laying in the opposite direction, having 2 pair of feet in my face. Freezing, falling asleep. I woke up because a guy woke me up because we do 24-hour guard duty. So it was my shift, together with another guy. My trench was suddenly empty because the other guys couldn't sleep there for some reason. So I woke up and I got up, and it's pretty bright. This was 3:30 in the morning. It was very bright, like almost daylight. And I'm trying to wake up because I haven't been sleeping too good. You know the feeling you have when your body's starting to wake up.
Sure.
And then just like maybe 30 yards in front of me, I suddenly heard and I'm like, holy fuck, what's that? Like there's an animal or something very close to us making a very, very creepy sound. And suddenly it started running, and the other guy who I had a guard shift with, he saw something run. And then one of the guys, and you just keep hearing it like, ah! Ah! So I'm picking up my rifle. It's a deactivated one, but I mean, at least I can hit it with it. But and it keeps making these weird sounds, and I'm like, the fuck, are we getting killed by like Bigfoot or something? And then another guy, like I just woke up one of the guys that's more experienced, my unit co-commander, and he heard it as well. And he's like, yeah, that's a fox.
I never heard that noise. That's amazing.
Yeah. What does the fox say?
So funny. I never could have imagined.
Like it was pretty creepy listening to that, and it kept going for like an hour.
We did an event one time with some noises like that, and I don't know. I think it was this animal called a fisher cat. That is this. I think the fisher cat's in the weasel family. It's like a big weasel. There's not a lot of them around, and it was making this like ear splitting howl, like sounds like a mountain lion or something. And I mean, some guys were like really afraid. I don't know. Those sometimes, like we've talked about before, those things that happen at events that you never could have planned for, that you never would have expected, are the most memorable and the most special.
Yeah, and it's funny because a few hours later, around 6 o'clock in the morning, from behind us, we suddenly heard "Fascista! Ora!" And that was the guy who had to leave for work. He came back before going to work dressed as a Russian, and he was just storming us.
Wow, that's great. I love that kind of stuff.
And we were like, oh, holy shit, grab your rifles. Where the fuck is my rifle?
That's
Sitting
really
in
cool.
a trench like, where's my rifle? As this guy just storms forward. It was intense.
I love it. Yeah, we've had some things like that happen. and immersion events. Some of them were planned, and some of them were surprise even to me. But it's always kind of fun to kind of go off script like that. Even if one person in a unit knows about it, if the other people don't know about it, it can kind of add an element of realism for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, we need to fill an episode with weird reenacting incidents.
I think we could do an episode with weird reenacting experience, things that happened. We could do like an episode with terrible things that happened, which I think would be really funny. So maybe for a future time.
Yeah.
But I think that's it, right? We're running low on time.
Yeah, I think so. We kind of ran through what we wanted to talk about, anyways.
Cool.
Or was there anything you miss?
I guess a closing thought that I have is if there's one major thing about this events episode that we've done is the importance of event organizers communicating with people who are going to events, and the importance of unit commanders to communicate with event organizers so that we can all work together on this and come together and do things that are really worth everybody's time.
Yeah, and even though the organizer can do a lot of promotion, one of the biggest, most important pieces of promotion ever is word of mouth.
Definitely.
From the reenactors gone to the event, telling other members of their unit or other units about like this event. It's cool. Go to it. Word of mouth helps a lot.
Definitely. All right, Lasse. It's been fun.
It's always fun.
Yeah, always fun. We'll have to record something again soon. I guess till next time, thanks and goodbye.
Thank you. This is Lasse just popping in real quick to tell you that the next episode of the Reenactors Corner will come in just a week on Thursday, June 20th. Our last episode, episode 4, with Ricky talking about the Spanish Blue Division. That was more sort of an extra episode. We're kind of still trying to get into a schedule. So we're going to upload the next one June 20th, and then we're going to go every other week. So next one after that would be July 4th. That's American National Day. Awesome. That's a way to celebrate it, listening to reenactment talk. So yeah, just wanted to tell you that. Please share the podcast with all your friends, family maybe, co-workers, who knows. See you next time. Bye.